This is Jake Simpson here with actually my first official VFX tutorial for FullMoonVFX.net. So in this tutorial, we're going to go over how to make a shot similar to this. Now, I just want to say in advance, I'm probably going to go fast through this because this is a long effect to do, but I feel it deserves a tutorial because it is something that is worth doing. So, this effect originally I saw in the trailer for Star Wars 5. It's just some jets flying over the water. Now you can do this in 3D with a 3D environment and particle simulations, but nobody has time for that. So, let's take off. I'm going to show you how to do all of this entirely inside of After Effects. I'm going to delete these. Now this composition that I have open, you can just create a new composition by clicking this. I have it at 5,000 pixels by 544 pixels tall. Now it needs to be really wide because this effect is going to stretch on through a part of the clip. As you can see over here, it goes very long. So this is made entirely with solid layers. So I'm going to recreate this with a new solid. And this color works. I just color picked from down here. Use this bright greenish blue color. Then I'm going to give it a mask. Now, I don't know where this went. There we go. So now for this, you can just hit G on the keyboard or click the pen tool up here. And then you just sort of want to draw a mask out for what you think the water should look like that will be spraying out from under the jets. And you just want to mask this out, so then you'll have this. And now this you want to feather out. You actually might want to make this a bit taller in the back. You can hit F on the keyboard to open up the feather for the mask. Then you can just drag this up. I'd say around 60 is probably good. Just want this to be soft around the edges. You can also go and refine this mask, kind of tweak it, make it a bit smoother if you'd like, if you don't want such a sharp line there. You don't want it very flat. You can also hit G, add another mask, kind of just tweak that a bit. That should be good. The next thing we're going to do, you can type in here, add Turbulent Displace. Just drag this down on here. Now what this is going to do is just give us the main texture, not texture, but outline to this shape. Now you want this to be very strong. I suggest around 115, but you want the size to be lower, maybe around 38-ish. So what this will do is just kind of give you these waves around the edges. And now to animate it, you'll just go to the very first frame in your composition and click on Offset Turbulence. You want the keyframe right next to it. So then go to the very end of your composition here, and you want to drag this value backwards. You can hold Shift on your keyboard for it to go faster, but you want this to be very far back, around there. And so what this will do is it will offset this turbulent noise, and it'll just kind of give you a fake effect of this spraying backwards. Now what we'll do next is duplicate this turbulent displace layer, or we can drag a new one down, but since we've already keyframed this, I'm going to duplicate. Now you can take this, do Command D on a Mac or Control D on Windows. And now for this one, you'll want to bring it way a bit higher and bring the size down because you just want that texture to it. And then if you hit U on the keyboard, you can see the keyed effects. You want to go to the very end over here, click on Turbulent Displace 2, and you can just change this a bit so it varies a bit more. I'm going to drag it forward. Actually, I'll drag it back because it's smaller, so it'll move faster. So now, as you play through, you sort of have this motion moving backwards. Now the next thing we're going to do is add a texture down here. We can do that with Fractal noise. Just type it in here. Click this, drag it down onto our footage, and then that'll give you this effect, but we don't want it that visible, so you can go down here to the opacity, and drag that down a bit, maybe around 20. That just gives you a bit of a texture to it. Also play around with the contrast a bit. That looks good. Now the last thing we're going to add to it is a directional blur. Let's drag it down there. Alright, now with this, you just want to point this thing in the direction that the water will be going. So you want it about -85-ish, and you want to increase this blur length somewhere around 50, maybe 60. So what that does is it just kind of adds a motion blur. See, with and without it, just makes it look like it's moving, even if it's not. Now the next thing we'll do, as you can see in the example, is add some shading, which is pretty easy. All you have to do is make a new solid. The same color works. Just hit OK. And then just draw another mask, G on the keyboard, click the pen tool, and just drag this, create another mask. Now you want this mask to be smaller than the original. It's about good. And then you want to feather this way out. So F on the keyboard, or you can do this drop down menu, and just feather that way out. But you can't really see it, it kind of blends in. So we're going to change the transfer mode of it from here, from normal to multiply. Now what that does is it just kind of darkens it. So that way you can see your feather a bit better. Change that to something around there. And then we will drag the layer, hit V on the keyboard to go back to the mouse tool. I'm going to drag this back a bit. Just position it so that it works best. Kind of reposition it, you can scale it however you think looks best. And then the last thing is we'll hit T on the keyboard to bring up the opacity, and we'll just bring that down a tad bit, maybe to 92. And then last thing we'll do is duplicate this layer again, bring the opacity down to like 30 on there, and bring it down a bit. And then F to feather, and bring the feather down just a little bit. So that way you sort of have this wave. I'll also include the original file that I used, that I made here, in the project files. So now next, what we're going to make is the water. Now the water is completely made in After Effects as well. So what you can do for this is just create some gray layers and make them 3D, and then you'll want to turn them sideways. So you can hit W on the keyboard. Actually, I will just show you. New solid. Grab this color. Just have this gray color. Okay. And then you have this solid layer. So I'm going to hide all of these. And with this layer, change it to a 3D layer over here by clicking that square, and then hit W on the keyboard. That gives you your rotation tool. Now you can just click on the X and drag it so that it's flat. And you can also hit V for your mouse and drag it out a bit and move it down. But you'll want this to be very long, so you'll want to stretch this way out. Then after that, you can duplicate this layer, Command D on a Mac, Control D on Windows. And then on the upper layer, you'll want to add a fractal noise. Once you get this, you'll want to change the contrast, bring the contrast way up, bring the brightness way down, and just mess around with this. You can change around the settings if you'd like here. I might try some other ones here. But once you find the one that you like, you just kind of want some hot spots on the water, as you can see in my examples here. Now this, you can see my settings for fractal noise. This is what I used. And once you have that, you have your solids, these, and you have them in 3D space, so you can drag them around. You'll want to go to the first frame and have them both be completely in frame, and then go to your last frame, and you'll want to drag them way over like I did. But you'll want to keyframe the position, so before you do that, hit P on the keyboard, click on position on the first frame, and drag it over like that. Then the final thing you'll want to do for the water is turn on motion blur here, and then turn it on for the composition. That'll give you this blur, but it won't be this much for you guys. What you have to do, click on the renderer up here, and this shutter angle will probably be 100 for you guys. You want to drag this way up to around 720 if you can. And then the next is change the samples per frame to something very high if you have a computer that can handle it. The default is somewhere around 12, I think. And that just makes it a bit more choppy. So if you can bring this number way up to something around 48, that's good. It smooths it out a bit. But then this is going to be slow, so you'll want to pre-render this. But I have this in the project file that you can use. So now, let's jump into the actual composition. Now I made a new composition. You can click on the project, new comp right here. And I made this composition 1280 by 520 pixels and around 2 to 3 seconds long. Okay. Next we'll want to do is create a 3D camera. So you can right click, new camera, and the preset 50mm is fine. Hit OK. Okay. Next what we'll want to do is click on the active camera and change it to the top view. We're doing this so that we can animate the camera moving. So now click on the camera, make sure it's selected, press P on the keyboard, then hold Shift and press A. That will give you the point of interest and the position. You want to go to the first frame and keyframe both of these, then go to the last frame. Actually, on the first frame, you should drag it to the side a bit. And then go to the last frame on the composition and drag this over here, like that. So then that will just give you some motion in your 3D camera. Now you can click down here and select active camera again, just to go back to your normal view. So the next thing we'll add is the water spray, which I've included in the project file, the water. Now once your water is added to that composition, you'll want to make this a 3D layer by clicking on the square. And then you'll want to drag it over, go to the first frame, hit P to bring out the position, keyframe that, and go to the very last frame, and you just want to make sure it stays on frame. So it's okay if you move it here, move it a tad bit. Actually, we'll go back to the top view and make our camera motion a bit more. So you can go to the first frame and drag the camera over a bit, and go to the last frame and drag it over a bit more, just so that there's some more motion. Actually, we want this pretty big, a wide range of motion. So we want that a pretty big line. And we can go back to active camera, and now you just want to position this. So go to the first frame, you can drag this over. This first one is the x-axis, so you can drag that over. Go to the last frame out here and drag it over again. So that just ensures that it stays in camera. Now the water is pretty bright. We can change that color by going Effect, Color Correction, Curves. Now I'll just bring this down a bit. Go into the red channel, bring that down a bit. We want it kind of bluish. Green, bring that down a bit. That looks better. So now you kind of want the water to be a bit bigger, so you can extend this up. Go to the first frame, make sure you're on the first frame, hit P on the keyboard, click on position, not on the keyframe, but position. And drag it up.
Oh, honey.
Now, once you make sure that this keyframe is selected, it's blue or yellow, depending on the version you have, you want to drag this up, just so that it's more in frame. Now the last thing we're going to do for the water is go over here, click on the rectangle tool, and just kind of align it above the water. And you just want to drag this so that you have a mask there. Now hit V to go back to your mouse tool, and you just want to feather this out. So hit F on the keyboard and just feather this way out. You can also adjust your mask a bit to make sure it blends best. Alright, that should be good. Now also how I'm moving around, you can press and hold space bar and then click and drag, and that will move things around. Or you can middle click and drag on your mouse. So now next thing we're going to do is go into our footage over here, and we'll add in the sky. Make this a 3D layer, and we're going to want to put this way back because there will be a lot of movement. So hit P on the keyboard to open the position, and I'm going to click on the Z axis here. It's the last number, and I want to type in something like 9800, so that it's way back there. And then click on this corner and drag way out. You can also hold Shift on the keyboard to keep its dimensions. And then now you just want to make sure that this stays in frame. And if it does, you can drag it down just so it takes up more. There we go. Should be good. Next thing we'll do is add in the farthest mountain. So I'm going to use Cliff 3 right here. Just drag this in. I'll make this a 3D layer. Then what I'm going to do now is hit R on the keyboard to bring up the rotation and orientation. I'm going to go into orientation, the center number, and just type in 180 because I want this to be flipped. Now I can put this way back in the Z axis by hitting P, and you can drag this way out, or you can type in something like 8,500 in the Z axis. I'll put it way back there. And you can scale it how you would like. This is going to be our main background, so you want it to always be in the image, but you don't want to see things like this tree, but we can cover that up later. So you see it goes off frame, so we might make this a bit bigger. Drag it over, so that it's always, it'll be covered up, so it's okay if it kind of goes off frame. Maybe a bit bigger. Alright, that looks good. So the next thing we'll do is add in some more cliffs in the foreground. I'm going to start with Cliff 3 as well. Should have renamed that. Make it a 3D layer. Drag it over a bit. Hit R for rotation and orientation. Do the same thing you did. Type in 180 right here, just so it flips. And then hit P. We'll drag this way out. I would say around 6,000 or 6,800. I don't want it too close. Put this around here and drag this way up. This is going to be a foreground mountain, so we'll go to the first frame and align it over here. Drag this up. There you get a little bit of parralaxing, which is what we want. That's good. Actually, I'm going to drag these both up a bit, just so that they look larger. Way out there. Alright, that's good. Next is we can take this next cliff, Cliff 1, drag it out. Same thing, 3D layer, R for rotation, change this to 180 degrees, and then P for position, and drag it way out there. This one will be much closer. This is our big mountain. I'm going to set this to around 4,000 pixels, and drag this way out. Actually, I'm not going to hold shift for this. I want this to be a very big mountain. I'm going to go to the last frame over here and just kind of set this right here. Maybe bring the scale down a little bit. And then I'm also going to take the mask tool, G, or click up here, and I'm going to just draw around this mountain just so that I can make it blend a bit more. So this way the mountain blends a bit. You can hit F to feather the mask. I'd only do it like 12 pixels, so it blends a bit. And now we have some parallaxing mountains, which is pretty good. Now if you want, you can add as many as you like, depending on how much you want. I'm going to add one more in, cliff 2. Same thing, 3D layer, rotation, 180 degrees. Move it over, and I'm going to put this back at around 5,400 pixels. Oops, press P on the keyboard. 5,400 pixels. Increase the scale. I'm also going to mask out this blue part here. So hit G on the keyboard to give you the pen tool. And actually I'll show you something else right now. If you select this part and go around the part that you don't want to be on there, then you can hit M on the keyboard, M as in Mike, and change the mask here from add to subtract. Then that will subtract that part off of your image. Now for the final part, I'll hit V from my mouse, and make sure to select this layer and just drag it down a bit. Alright, that looks good. Now I just want this to go behind here. You can even stretch that out a bit. Increase the scale. I just want these to seem very large. Alright, that's good. But now they all don't blend, so we need to blend them together. We'll start by this cliff, looks pretty good. So we want to blend them to that. So we'll click this cliff here. Effect, color correction, levels. Somewhere here. Here we go. Click that. And then in the effects controls, drag this out a bit. Levels is here. So now down here by the quality selector, you have this RGB. Click that and change it to red. Now you can see the red values between these. You want to blend this cliff to that back one. So we can click on the red channel here and just kind of tweak this until it is sort of blending with that cliff in the background. Once that's pretty good, do the same thing but change it to green down here, and make sure to change the levels from red to green as well, and do the exact same thing. And then finally, same thing, change to blue, change levels to blue, and blend it with the far cliff. Once that's done, you can change this back to RGB. And the cliff might look a little bit off, so what you can do always, select the cliff, do Effect, Color Correction, Tint. Change the percentage here until it sort of blends a bit more, maybe around 38. Looks good. We can always tweak that later. You can go back into these channels and just kind of change them by eye, what you think looks best. Kind of even it out a bit. Go back into green. There we go. That looks pretty good. Next we'll do the same with this one. So actually I can select both of these, hold Shift, and click the other one. Command C on a Mac or Control C on Windows. click on this next cliff. So I'm going to drag this here. That's this one. And do Command V on a Mac or Control V on Windows. Sorry. And then do the same thing. Change this to red. We want to increase the red. So drag this one out. Green. Go up here. Go green. Drag this out. And then blue. Same up here. Blue. And drag this out. Now once that blends pretty well, go back to RGB. And that already looks pretty good. It'll be blended in with more clouds, so it's okay if it doesn't look perfect. And then last one that we'll do is this cliff. I might refine this mask a bit. You can just click on the layer and your mask should come up. If not, you can click down here to hide the masks. Once that looks good, you can do the same thing. Command V on the keyboard, and that already actually looks pretty good. But I think I will increase some of the colors just a little bit, just so that they can blend a little bit more. Now that looks pretty good. We can always color grade these at the end. So now I'm going to show how to blend the water in with the background, because right now the cliffs just kind of go behind the water and it doesn't look very realistic. So to do that, I'm going to create a new solid. I'm going to make it very long. So for the width, make sure this is unchecked. For the width, I'm going to type in 3000. And then this, I'm going to select sort of the color of the bright spot on the water. So this is good. And hit OK. Now I'm going to make this a 3D layer. Clicking that. And I'm going to just drag it down. I'm also going to type in fractal noise here. And drag this out onto this. I'll take down the opacity of it a bit. Maybe down to 24. And then I'm also going to take the rectangle tool and drag right here. I'm going to make sure it stays inside the box, like this. And then hit F on the keyboard to feather, and feather this way out. You can also add more masks if you want to refine this a bit. Hit G, click on here to add more mask points. So that way we can sort of round this out. You can also do this with the ellipse tool, but don't know why I didn't think of that. Once you make that a bit rounded, you just kind of want to push this back and Z space. What you can do is hide the layer here with the eyeball. Select the mountain that you want it to be in front of. So I'm going to make it in front of cliff 2. That's this one here. Hit P for the position. Click on the position, do Command C on a Mac or Control C on Windows. Then click on your solid. You can turn the eyeball back on and do Command V, Control V. And then you'll just want to scale this up a bit and bring it forward. We actually will want this in front of the main mountain. So just bring it in front of that, drag it up here a bit. You want this to be very long. It's just sort of a fog that will cover up most of your composition. Once that's good, you can feather it out more if you'd like. Get it to blend a bit more. And then hit T for the opacity. And bring this down. Just sort of until it blends a bit better. You can also make it a brighter color by doing layer solid settings. I would suggest making it brighter. Okay. That looks pretty good. You can always click on the water as well, and you can reposition it. Click on the water, go to the first frame, hit P, and select the position right here. And then you can just hit the Y and drag that down or up, whatever you feel like. To hide all of these boxes, by the way, you can do Command-Shift-H on a Mac or Control-Shift-H on a Windows, and that just hides all of your layers. Now, if you also want, you can take this, Command-Shift-H, and make it a bit thinner and bring the feathering down. So whatever you think looks best for the time. Also take your water and you can rotate it a bit. Once that's good, you can add in your clouds. So now the mountains really don't match all too well, so you can take the cliffs off and drag them up a bit. They almost seem like they're too far down. Once you do that, that should help them to look a bit more menacing and large. So now the next thing we'll do is darken the mountains. So I'm going to select the background mountain. Since they're all color corrected to this, we'll do Effect, Color Correction, Exposure. If I can find it on here somewhere. There we go, Exposure. I'm going to bring this down to around -1. Then I'm also going to do Effect, Color Correction, Tint, and change the black to kind of a green, a dark green like this. Hit OK, and bring this down to about 32%. Then I'm going to copy both of these, Command-C, Control-C. Click on this, the bottom layer, hold Shift, select all of the cliffs, and then do Command-V or Control-V. Now all of the mountains look relatively similar to each other, and they sort of match a bit more. They look darker and more equal to each other. So now we get to add the jets. For Element 3D users, you just create a new solid, name this element, make comp size here, hit OK, and then do Effect, Video Copilot, Element. But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to show how to do it for the inexperienced people, or the people who do not have Element. I'm sorry, you may be very experienced, but just not have Element. So I'm going to choose the far F16. I'm going to drag this in. I kind of want him positioned around here. Back. I'm going to make it a 3D layer. Drag it over a bit. And I'm going to hit P for position. I'm going to drag it way back to around 900. And then you can scale him up if you would like to. Hold Shift to maintain its scale. And I want him to be around here. So hit P for the position, and go to the very end of the composition. You'll have to find him, click on the X-axis, and drag him way over. You can also move him up or down if you would like. But this way, the F16 is just sort of flying over. I'll change this to half quality. That way he's just sort of flying over the water. And now, do the exact same thing with the middle F16. Bring him in, 3D layer, position, take him to maybe 500. Bring him off frame, because he's not on frame for the first one, unless you want him to be. You can position them anywhere. Hit P for the position, click P, go to the end frame. You'll also want to drag him way over. That's good. Now you have these two F-16s flying over the water. And you can do the same with a closer one, which I have right here, but I'm not going to do that right now, just because of timing. But what you want to do now is kind of add some clouds to the background. You can do this before the F-16s or after. I skipped a step, so I'm going to go back and do it now. Just drag these in, make them 3D layers, and then go into active camera, change it to top view, and then just drag all of these clouds way back. You can see all of your mountains are way back here, so you'll want them to be back here with your mountains. Just select each layer individually and then kind of move it around to wherever you want it. These layers are just supposed to sort of blend the background with the foreground. Active camera. And then you can just kind of see where all of your clouds are. That's this one over here. This one I'll bring back here. Just kind of scale it up. So it's kind of like a mist or a fog. That looks pretty good right there. This one. That's all right there. I might bring that a bit closer to the camera. A little bit. This one. That one. Probably way back there. And then select all of your cloud layers. Hit T on the keyboard to bring up the opacity or opacity. Oops. Hold Shift, select them all, and then drag that way down. You want it to be visible, but not too visible. So maybe 18%. Whatever you think looks realistic. And you can select some more clouds, like I will select this one, duplicate it, and you can drag it to another point. Maybe change the scale around a bit. Bring it up, bring it much closer to the camera. Change the opacity of it, so it kind of has a more of a parallaxing effect. You can also go back into the top view. You can select a layer, duplicate, move it around. Could have sworn someone just called my name. Hearing ghosts now. Alright, so once you have that, you can also scroll through your composition, put it in front of your mountains, move them around, duplicate all your clouds, move them anywhere you would like. Just try to make it look a bit more three-dimensional by adding the clouds parallaxing over the background. I want to change the scale and opacity as well. And then you just kind of have these clouds drifting around in the background. You can also go back and change the opacity of all of these. This I might bring down a bit. And then duplicate it. Bring it in front of this cliff. Here. W for the rotation. Just rotate it around. This is all just personal preference. Whatever you think looks the best. I'm going quick through this, but you can spend as much time on this as you like. Whatever you think will look best in the final result. So now we have a lot of layers here. If you want, you can pre-compose a layer. I'll show you how to do that. Select the bottom cloud layer, Shift, bring it up, and you can do Layer, Pre-compose. But I would not do that for the clouds because they're all in varying distances from the camera, and you will lose that if you pre-compose it. So this does look pretty complex, but I promise it is not as complex as it looks. So the next thing we'll do is add the water spray under the jets. So how we're going to do that is go up here to our water spray. We'll drag this out. Now it's going to be very big, so hit 3D layer and it will get smaller. Now what you want to do is find the position of your jet. So I'm going to click far, hit P on the keyboard, select position, make sure you're on the first frame of the composition, do Control or Command C on the position, then click on the water spray, the top one, and then do Command or Control V. That will position it with your airplane, and you'll probably want to scale it down a bit. And then if you move it at all, make sure you hit P on the keyboard. You're on the first frame and you select position, because otherwise it will add a new keyframe. So now here you just kind of want to position it with your jet just below. I'll change the scale. So this way, now when your jet flies, you will have the water spraying up behind the jet. You may also want to move your jets down a bit because they are a bit high on the screen. Now once again, I'm sorry if I'm doing this very fast. It's a lot of info to get across, and I want this to be short so it does not bore everyone. But you can change the scale on this, move it around just until you think that it looks right. You can tweak all of these as long as you want. You can move the water itself. Just make sure to go to the first frame, hit P, select position, and you can move it up a bit or down, whichever you prefer. And that is how you do it. And you can also take the water, duplicate it, select your second plane, the near one to the camera, or the middle one, hit P to get its position, or the first frame, and there, position, and then paste it, hit P. But if you duplicated it, make sure to uncheck position before you paste it. That way, it's much closer to the camera. I'll go to the end here, click on position so it's selected, and just kind of drag this back so that it's behind the plane. You can also tweak the position of this one. There we go. Now I'll show you how to do the reflection on the water. All you have to do is deselect everything by just clicking in a random spot. Take the water that you want to have the reflection of and do Command D or Control D, and then rotate it the x-axis. After you've rotated it, make sure to go to the first frame or the last frame, wherever you have a keyframe set. Hit P for the position and click on the position so that every keyframe is selected, and drag it down below the original water spray. You can also rotate it just to even it up. I'll move it up and just change the position of this. And then what you want to do is you can also make it a 2D layer if you would like. This will make it brighter and show up more, but then you'll have to change the position again. But then once you have this under the original, change the transfer mode from normal to color dodge. That will make it brighter. But as you can see, it's under all of the other layers because it's in 3D space. So what you'll want to do is you can also take these 3 layers, Command C or Control C on Windows, and delete them, copy them. Then take everything here, so Shift, Control, get everything, do Layer, Pre-Compose, and then you can name this Background. Now you have the background composition there. So now do Command or Control V to put all of your water sprays back in this composition. Now what you want to do is also double click on your background to go back into it and take your jets. Select both of them. Do Command or Control C on Windows and delete them from this composition. Go back to Comp 1 and paste them in. So now your jets will be above the water. Then you can take your water sprays and you can adjust them to be more accurate and look like they're over the water. Same with the reflections. Just make sure to rename it so you don't get confused. So, reflection 1. Let's put that on. And then add a fast blur to it. To the reflection. This way it just sort of blends a bit more with the water. So now you have this reflection, and then do the exact same for this layer. Command or Control D, and then hit W for your rotation tool. Rotate it down like this, and go to the first or last frame in this case. Hit P for position, and you'll want to make sure position is selected and drag it down. So now the issue that we're having is since there's no camera in here, everything is moving off screen. So what you want to do is go back to your background. You can click it here, double click it here, and then click on your camera. Do Command C or Control C, then go back here, Command V, and paste it back in. That way you keep your camera, and you can keep everything consistent. So then take your second reflection, last frame, make sure all the keyframes are selected, and just move it into place, and then do color dodge again, and then add another fast blur to it, blur it out, and change the opacity of both of the reflections. So hit T, drag that way down. And you can always mess around with the scale and everything, but for the most part. So, thank you all again for watching. I hope that you have enjoyed this tutorial. There will be more coming that hopefully will be faster. It will not take so long. Feel free to check out the website at FullMoonVFX.net. This is Jake Simpson. Thanks again for watching. Feel free to leave a comment. I will be posting the project file as well on FullMoonVFX.net.